You never really understand how much a mother sacrifices, until one day you discover a secret she has been hiding for years. Welcome to Grandpa Next, the home of emotional life stories that touch the heart and reveal powerful life lessons. Daniel had been away for 9 long years. He left home as a young man with big dreams and empty pockets, promising his mother that one day he would return successful and give her the comfortable life she deserved. Life abroad was not easy, but Daniel worked hard, saved every dollar, and slowly built a small construction business. After years of struggle, he finally succeeded. Now he was coming home. He imagined the moment many times. His mother opening the door, her face lighting up with happiness, the two of them laughing, maybe even crying. He wanted to surprise her. He wanted to see the look on her face when she realized her son had finally made it. But Daniel had no idea that the real surprise was waiting for him. Every morning, long before sunrise, his 68-year-old mother, Margaret, woke up at 4:30 a.m. While the rest of the neighborhood slept, she quietly moved through her small kitchen, preparing breakfast, not just for herself, but for 2 children sleeping in the next room. Her hands were rough and worn from years of hard work. The skin on her palms was thick, her fingers slightly bent with age and labor. Those hands had washed clothes, cooked meals, carried heavy bags, counted coins, and fixed broken things for many years. After cooking, she packed everything into a small wheeled cart and walked 4 blocks to a bus station. There, she sold simple breakfast to workers: egg sandwiches, bread, and tea. She stood there for hours every morning, smiling and greeting people, earning just enough money to survive. Then she walked back home, cleaned the house, picked up the children from school, cooked dinner, helped with homework, and at night she counted every dollar she earned, making sure the bills were paid and the children had everything they needed. For 9 years she lived like this. For 9 years she raised those 2 children alone. But the children were not hers. They were Daniel's children, and he didn't know. One afternoon, while walking home from school with the children, Margaret suddenly felt dizzy. The world around her started spinning, and her chest felt heavy. She tried to keep walking, but her legs felt weak. "Grandma, are you okay?" the little girl asked, her voice full of worry. "I'm fine," Margaret tried to say, but her voice sounded weak even to herself. The boy quickly helped her sit down on a low wall. A passerby called an ambulance, and Margaret was taken to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor looked at her test results and spoke gently. "Your blood pressure is very high," he said. "You also have severe anemia and extreme exhaustion. You've been overworking your body for many years. If you don't slow down, next time it could be much worse, maybe even a stroke." That night, lying in the hospital bed, Margaret stared at the ceiling and thought about the secret she had been hiding for 9 years. Under her bed at home there was a small metal box. Inside the box were 3 things: 2 birth certificates, 1 photograph, and a letter addressed to her son. A letter that began with the words, "My son, there is something I should have told you a long time ago." Margaret closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She knew one thing for sure. Sooner or later, Daniel would find out the truth. And when that day came, everything would change. But what happened when Daniel finally came home shocked everyone. Daniel stood outside the small old house where he had grown up, holding his suitcase in one hand and a gift bag in the other. The house looked smaller than he remembered. The paint on the walls was fading, and the wooden gate made the same creaking sound when he pushed it open. He took a deep breath and smiled. "Home," he whispered to himself. He knocked on the door. A few seconds later, he heard small footsteps running inside the house, followed by a child's voice. "Grandma, someone is at the door." Daniel frowned slightly. "Grandma?" he thought. "Whose child is this?" The door opened, and a little girl, around 7 years old, stood there looking up at him with curious eyes. Behind her, a boy, maybe 9 years old, peeked from behind the wall. For a moment, Daniel just stood there, confused. Then from inside the house, he heard the voice he had missed for 9 years. "Who is it, dear?" Margaret walked slowly toward the door, and then she saw him. The plate in her hands slipped and fell to the floor. shattering into pieces. Daniel? She whispered, her eyes filling with tears. Daniel dropped his suitcase and stepped forward. In the next moment, they were hugging each other tightly. Margaret was crying, and Daniel felt his own eyes getting wet too. "I told you I would come back, Mom," he said softly. "I told you." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, until the little girl tugged on Margaret's dress. "Grandma, who is he?" she asked. Margaret quickly wiped her tears and looked nervous for a moment. This is Daniel," she said. "My son." The two children looked at him with wide eyes. The boy stepped forward slowly. "Are you our uncle?" the boy asked. Daniel forced a small smile, but inside his mind, questions started to explode. "Uncle?" He looked at his mother, but she avoided eye contact and quickly said, "Come inside first, you must be tired. We will talk." Something felt strange. Very strange. That evening, Daniel sat at the dinner table, watching the two children laugh and talk with his mother. The little girl told stories about school, and the boy talked about how he wanted to become a pilot one day. They were comfortable in the house. Too comfortable. Like they belonged there. "Mom," Daniel finally said. "Whose children are they?" Margaret froze for a moment. She slowly put down her spoon. "They are staying with me," she said quietly. "Staying? For how long?" Daniel asked. Margaret didn't answer immediately. She looked tired, older than he remembered, and there was something else in her eyes. Something like worry or fear. "For a long time," she finally said. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. Something didn't feel right. The house felt different. His mother looked tired and weak. And those children, there was something strangely familiar about them. Around midnight, Daniel got up to drink water. As he walked past his mother's room, he noticed the door was slightly open. Inside, Margaret was sleeping. He was about to walk away when he noticed something under her bed. A small metal box. Daniel didn't know why, but he felt a strange urge to open it. Slowly, quietly, he pulled the box out and opened it. Inside were some papers, an old photograph, and 2 birth certificates. Daniel picked up the photograph first. The photo showed a young woman holding a baby, and standing next to her was Daniel himself. His heart started beating fast. With shaking hands, he picked up the birth certificates and read the names. The room suddenly felt like it was spinning, because on both birth certificates, under father's name, it said, Daniel Harper. The box fell from his hands, and in that moment, Daniel realized something that made his blood run cold. Those 2 children were not strangers. They were his children. But if these were his children, then where was their mother? Daniel's hands were shaking as he stared at the birth certificates lying on the floor. His mind refused to accept what his eyes were seeing. He picked up the papers again, hoping he had read the name wrong. But the name was still there. Father's name, Daniel Harper. His heart was beating so loudly that it felt like the whole house could hear it. He quickly picked up the old photograph from the floor and looked at it again. In the photo, he was younger, standing next to a woman he once loved. A woman he had not seen in 9 years. Her name was Emily. Suddenly, memories came rushing back. Emily worked at a small cafe near his old office. She was kind, simple, and always smiling. During Daniel's struggling days, when he had no money and no success, she was the only person who believed in him. She used to tell him, "One day you will become very successful. I believe in you." They fell in love, but Daniel was young and ambitious. When he got the opportunity to go abroad, he made the hardest decision of his life. He left, promising Emily that he would come back for her once he became successful. But life got busy. Work, money, success, everything moved so fast. Calls became fewer. Messages became shorter. And slowly he lost contact with her. He never knew. She was pregnant. Daniel sat on the floor, holding the photograph, feeling a heavy weight on his chest. At that moment, he heard a weak voice from the door. "I was going to tell you, one day." Daniel looked up. Margaret was standing at the door, holding the wall for support. She looked tired, but her eyes were calm, like someone who had been carrying a heavy secret for many years. "Mom, what is this?" Daniel asked, his voice breaking. "Why is my name on these birth certificates? Why are those children here? And where is Emily?" Margaret slowly walked into the room and sat on the chair. For a few moments she said nothing. Then she looked at Daniel and spoke softly. "The day after you left the country, Emily came here," Margaret said. "She was pregnant. She was scared and alone. She said she didn't want to stop you from chasing your dreams, so she didn't tell you." Daniel felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. "She came to me because she had nowhere else to go," Margaret continued. "I told her she could stay here. She lived with me. I took care of her. And when the twins were born, I helped raise them." "Twins," Daniel whispered. Margaret nodded. "A boy and a girl. You saw them." Daniel covered his face with his hands. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to feel. Shock, guilt, confusion. Everything hit him at once. "But where is Emily now?" he asked quietly, almost afraid to hear the answer. Margaret looked down at her hands, and for the first time, Daniel saw tears falling from her eyes. "Emily didn't want to be a burden," Margaret said. "She worked very hard after the children were born. She took a job in another city. She sent money every month for the children. She called every week to talk to them." Daniel looked up quickly. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me the truth?" Margaret looked at him with tired eyes. "Because Emily made me promise," she said. "She said, if Daniel comes back successful, tell him the truth. But if he comes back poor and struggling, don't tell him. I don't want to become a burden in his life." Daniel felt tears rolling down his face now. For 9 years, he thought he was chasing success for his future. But he didn't know. His future was already here. "And the letter?" Daniel asked slowly. "The letter in the box?" Margaret took a deep breath. "That letter is from Emily," she said. "She wrote it 3 months ago." Daniel's heart started beating fast again. "What does it say?" he asked. Margaret looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness. "She is very sick, Daniel," Margaret said quietly. "She wrote that letter because she wanted to see you one last time." Daniel felt like the world had stopped moving. "She is very sick, Daniel. She wrote that letter because she wanted to see you one last time." Those words echoed in his mind again and again. His hands felt cold, and his heart was filled with a pain he had never felt before. Not when he was poor, not when he struggled, not even when he was alone in a foreign country. This pain was different. This pain was guilt. "Where is she?" Daniel asked quickly. "Where is Emily?" Margaret stood up slowly and walked to the metal box. She picked up the letter and handed it to Daniel with trembling hands. "I didn't tell you immediately because I didn't know how to tell you," she said. "But now you know the truth. You should read it." Daniel opened the letter carefully. Inside was a simple piece of paper, and he immediately recognized the handwriting. It was Emily's. The letter said, "Dear Daniel, if you are reading this letter, it means you have finally come back home. First, I want you to know that I never hated you for leaving. I knew you had big dreams, and I was always proud of you. I didn't tell you about the children because I didn't want to stop you from becoming the man you wanted to become. I knew if I told you, you would stay, and then maybe one day you would regret it. So I decided to stay silent and raise our children with your mother. She is the reason our children grew up with love, food, and education. She is the real hero, not me. Daniel, I am very sick now, and the doctor says I may not have much time left. I don't want money. I don't want anything from you. I just have one wish. I want you to take care of our children. And if possible, I want to see you one last time. Emily." By the time Daniel finished reading, his tears were falling onto the paper. The next morning, Daniel left immediately to find Emily. After hours of driving, he reached a small hospital in another city. Margaret had given him the address. When Daniel entered the hospital room, he saw Emily lying on the bed. She looked very weak and thin, but when she saw Daniel, she smiled. That same warm, gentle smile he remembered from years ago. "Hi, Daniel," she said softly. Daniel walked slowly toward her, his eyes full of tears. I'm sorry, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry, Emily. Emily shook her head slightly. No, don't be sorry. You did what you had to do, and you came back. That's enough for me. Daniel sat next to her and held her hand carefully. It felt so light and fragile. I didn't know about the children, he said, but I promise you from today, I will be their father. I will take care of them, and I will take care of my mother too. She worked harder than anyone for my family. Emily smiled again, and a tear rolled down her cheek. I know you will, she said. That's why I waited for you. A few days later, Emily passed away peacefully. After that day, Daniel's life changed completely. He brought his children home, took care of his mother, and no matter how busy he became, he always made time for his family. Because he finally understood something very important. Success is not the money you earn. Success is the people you don't lose while earning that money. And Margaret, his old, tired mother, no longer had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to sell breakfast. Now she finally got to rest. And every night, before sleeping, Daniel would look at his children and think about one thing. He became successful. But his mother and Emily were the ones who paid the price for that success. And that was a lesson he would never forget. Never be so busy building your future that you forget the people who are part of it. Because one day you might become successful, but the people you did it for might not be there to see it.